Nathan here, welcome to another DirectX tutorial. Last tutorial we discussed how to generate the window, the Win32 window, and how to handle messages using the translate message and dispatch messages. In this tutorial we're going to start with Direct3D. Now I'm going to create a wrapper for the Direct3D, and I'm just going to make a Direct3D class. Now I'm going to call it graphics device to kind of resemble XNA, and we can use the graphics device to do most of the work. So this is the last tutorial. I will provide this in the description so you can download this and follow along with this tutorial, and I'll do that for every tutorial after this tutorial. So the next tutorial I will release there will be a final version of this tutorial in the description, so you can download that and then follow along. Now this will be in Visual Studio 2012. That's what the solution will be built for. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my new class. So I'm going to make a new header file. So I'm going to right click here, go to add new item. It's going to be a header file. Now I'm going to call this graphics device, and I'm gonna right click the source file and go to add new item. It's gonna be a CPP file, graphics device. Alright, so we just added the header and CPP file. Let's work with the header first. So let me go ahead and close this window here. Alright, so the header file. The header file, we need to generate the class for the graphics device. We need to let it know what the constructor is, what the functions are, we need to have pointers to the device and the Direct3D as well. We're also going to do the include guards here. Now I have been using the include guards with the #if_ndf. Other people use the pragma once for the include guards. I've just always used the if_ndf include guards ever since I started C++. So I'm going to do that. So the include guards, they just make sure it's only included once. So if not defined this, we define it, and then we generate the header file, it includes it, and then end if. So that way, if we have to include this file multiple times, the compiler will not include it multiple times. That will be discussed in more detail in my C++ series, if you're not sure about what includes guards are. Okay, so like I said, we need to have a pointer to the Direct3D and a pointer to device, and those are Direct3D elements. Those are Direct3D, classes, structures. We're going to have a need for those, so we need to include the Direct3D file. So go to #include opening bracket Direct3D D3D 9.h. So we include that one. D3D 9.h is needed for the Direct3D logic. It makes sense. Alright, so now that we have that included, let's generate our class. So the class is going to be very simple for now, but we can extend it later on. It's just going to wrap everything that we need for the Direct3D to do in a class. Alright, so we have a class here. Let's set up our public stuff here. First thing up is a constructor, of course, and then destructor. Now Direct Direct3D functions. Let's go ahead and initialize this. And we need to initialize it by passing the window handle and a Boolean value if we are running in windowed mode or not. Now we need to clear the back buffer by passing in a color. Direct3D color. The color, we want to clear it to. Now we want to begin a, just like in X and A, we have to call graphicsDevice.begin and graphicsDevice.end, and anything in between we can draw. So we need to do the same thing with DirectX. Void end. But we also need to call one more thing. Present. Alright, now we need pointers for Direct3D and the device. Now we're going to create a public access to the pointer device because we'll need it for some other things. For example, when we make our sprites, we need access to the device to do so. So there's two ways to generate the pointers. You can generate it using the interface or the lawn pointer. I use the lawn pointer. Oh, I don't want to comment that. So lawn pointer LP Direct3D device 9 device. So again, that just means the same thing that you're trying to create the pointer for the interface. Like that. A shorthand for that. Okay, now that's the only public access to a pointer we will need. So now we're done with the public access. Now let's discuss the private section here. We're going to have a pointer to the Direct3D as well. Now that can be private, so LP Direct3D 9 Direct3D. Since we do not need to have any external access to this, we can safely put this in the private area. If you do need it for some reason, you can just move it to the public section and it will work. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that, and let's go to the CPP file, and let's go ahead and implement our stuff there. Alright, so let's include the graphics device.h file. Oh, and I need double quotes there, not brackets. Alright, so we include that. Now let's go ahead and set up our functions and constructors / destructor. So now we set up our constructor. That does nothing at this point, but we will probably fill that in later. Now the destructor will do something. We need to get rid of all those pointers and release everything that Direct3D has done. So graphics device, and then the destructor. Alright, so if device is still valid, we need to release the information that Direct3D has set up. and we need to set that to null. If Direct3D is still valid, we need to release the information it has set up and set it to null. So remember, with C++, you don't have any automatic garbage collection and anything like that. So we need to do this by ourselves by doing releasing and setting pointers to null and deleting in some cases. But all you need to do for the Direct3D stuff is to release and set it to null. Alright, that's done. So now let's worry about the initialize function. HWND and bool windowed. Alright, create the Direct3D pointer. So we have a pointer set up in our fields attributes area, and it's a private Direct3D. So we can just say Direct3D is equal to Direct3D create 9. Then we pass it the SDK version. Now what you want to do here is to always use the D3D underscore SDK underscore version. So that will tell it what version to use. Okay, before we create the device, we need to set up some presentation parameters. You know, is it windowed or full screen? Is it, what type of stuff do you want it to be? Full screen, or what kind of resolution? The horizontal and vertical size of the back buffer, and those type of things. I'm going to set this up very simple. For now, it's just going to be 3 presentation parameters. I'm going to set this up very simple. We can extend it later on. You can fill it with everything that the presentation parameters need and just pass in the defaults. But I'm just going to leave those alone, but do 3 things that we'll need to do. So it's going to be, we need to set up the presentation parameters. It's going to be D3D present underscore parameters. Now I'm going to call presentation params. So we're going to zero out the memory. We need the ampersand presentation params, then size of presentation params. So we zero out the memory, and then we can use it. So presentation params.windowed is equal to windowed. You know, the boolean we pass in. Presentation params.swap effect. This just determines how it handles when you redraw, how it handles with the back buffer. So I'm going to go with the fastest possible option, which is D3D swap effect discard. That is the fastest swap effect it can use. Presentation params.hDevice window HWND. So we're just doing the 3 things we need: windowed mode, which we pass into the function here, and the handle to the window, which we pass into the function here, and the fastest swap effect possible, And then that's the only thing that we will need to do at this point. Later on, we'll fill this in to use every single possible option that we can have, and then we can just default it to whatever we want. So now we need to create the device, and we're going to use a few static things here. Let's go ahead and set this up, and then I'll comment on this. Direct3D, create device. D3D adapter default. That uses our primary monitor, our primary display, our default graphics adapter. Now we need to pass in the device type. D3D DEVTYPE underscore HAL. That means we're using hardware rasterization. Now we need to pass it the focus window, so HWND, we pass that into the function. Behavior flags. D3D create underscore mixed vertex processing. That will use both hardware and software for 3D calculations. Now we need to pass the presentation parameters, so we have ampersand presentation params. Now we need to pass the device, so ampersand device, closing parentheses, semicolon. So that will actually create the device, and then later on we'll make all these up to the programmer on the main.cpp file, so we can pass in the values, and then we can use this. We'll make this object-oriented as OP as possible, but for now we'll just keep all these things hard-coded. Alright, so that's the initialize function. Now let's discuss the clear function. Void graphics device clear, and it needs a Direct3D color, D3D color. Alright, second param is set to null so that it clears the entire back buffer. Device clear. Alright, so 0, null, we clear the entire back buffer. Flags, D3D clear underscore target. So that just clears the target surface. Then we pass it in the color that we decide we want to use. And the Z is 1.0F, and then 0 for stencil. So that's clearing, and that will give us a nice color for our background. Void graphics device begin. We just need to call device begin scene. Void graphics device end. We just need to call end scene. Now, we might extend this later on. That's why they're in their own functions here. We might add additional code in here as well, as with that line that we just have. Graphics device present. Present our scene to the window. Device present, and we're just gonna pass in null the entire time. So null, comma null, comma null, comma null. So 4 null values are passed in there. Alright, let's save that, and that looks about right. Alright, so I'm going to copy my notes here for when I give you the final version on what these do. Alright, so now let's go to the main.cpp file and set everything up to use the graphics device we just coded. Alright, so we include windows.h. Now we need to include graphics device.h. We have our generate window, we have our callback, and then we need to have more functions here. Update and draw. So void update, it's gonna accept float game time. Void draw, it's gonna accept a graphics device pointer called G device and float game time. Now we might create our own game time class that kind of resembles XNA, but for now it'll just be a float value. And for now it'll just be 0 anyway, because we have not gotten to timers just yet. Alright, so in the win main here, we have our comment here, update and draw. So we call update 0.0f and draw G device, comma, 0.0f. Now G device has not been initialized yet, so right where we have MSG, let's set up graphics device pointer G device is equals new graphics device. The constructor's empty, so we can do that. G device initialize HWND true. Now HWND is not working, so we need to modify our generate window a little bit to work with the HWND. We need to get that out basically. So HWND, go where we had the generate window function, declaring functions. And let's get our HWND out of this function by doing this. Alright, so we have modified the generate window, the parameters and attributes that we need to have. So now we need to modify it in the actual implementation. Alright, so in the generate window implementation, go ahead and do that. When it calls the other generate window, we need to pass it the HWND as well. Alright, so this is no longer needed in this generate window because we pass in the HWND. So let's go ahead and delete the HWND in the generate window function. Alright, now we did this in order to get the handle to our window outside of this generate window function. So now in our win main function, before we call generate window, we need to say HWND. And then we need to pass in after the 720, comma HWND. Alright. So now before we return our msg.w param, we need to delete G device. So we need to delete our G device pointer. Alright, last thing we need to do is generate the update and draw functions. So void update float game time update our sprites and other game logic. Void draw graphics device. I'm going to move this up here so it's easier. So void draw graphics device asterisk G device float game time. So now we need to draw. So now we need to clear, begin, and present in that order. So G device clear. Now we need to pass a color to use to clear it to. Now I'm going to use a simple RGB value. I'm not going to use alpha. So there is a nice macro for that. D3D color underscore XRGB. So now we open the parentheses and we just need to pass RGB. Those go from 0 to 255. So I'm going to say 0, 100, 100. G device begin. G device end. G device present. Alright, if we save it and build our solution, let's see if we have any errors. If you receive any errors when you build, especially linker errors, unresolved linker errors, you will probably have to go to View and then Other Windows and then Property Manager. It's down here. And then expand the project and then expand Debug and then double click this Microsoft.cpp.win32.user. And then we'll have to change this to VC++ directories. We'll have to change the include directories. So edit. So make sure that C program files x86 Microsoft DirectX SDK June 2010 /include is in here. Then click OK. Then in the library directories, make sure C program files x86 Microsoft DirectX SDK June 2010 /lib/x86. Make sure those are in the include directories and library directories respectively. And then in this linker, in the input section, make sure you have at least d3d9.lib. We'll get to this in the next tutorial. But at least d3d9.lib. So if you have any build errors, make sure you do that, and then make sure you check release mode to see if it followed through the settings followed through. Alright, and I'll add that to the top of this file. So if you download this file, it'll just be a nice reminder. So if you get any build errors, or it's nice to just double check, include directories. Make sure C program files x86 Microsoft DirectX SDK June 2010 /include has been added. Library directories. Make sure C program files Microsoft DirectX SDK /lib/x86 has been added. Linker, and then input. make sure d3d9.lib and d3dx9.lib are there. Alright, that is if you receive any build errors. Alright, back to the tutorial. It has succeeded. So now if we go to start debugging, now instead of having that white window background, our Direct3D has started working, and you know that because we have changed our color of our background. This still says your first Win32 window, so let's go ahead and change that in the main.cpp file. The project name is Direct3D, and let's just say graphics device implementation. Green background. Now we run that again, and our title has changed, and we have a green style background. Alright, by the way, let's discuss what this peak message is doing. So while we have this, it does not do our update and draw logic here. So let's go ahead and press F5, and you see I can move around the window around. Now if I move it past the side of my monitor, now you can't see this, but I'm moving it far to the left. Now it's outside of my monitor. Now I bring it back, and you see all that white. That's because, and I'll move it down. Now you see all that extra white. That's because the Direct3D has not updated and drawn again. So while I move it around, our game is frozen. And then when I release my mouse, it'll begin its updating and drawing. Alright, one final thing. If you do not want to worry about recalculating doing a lot of math when somebody resizes the window, I can do this, and I can resize the window to make it this. If you do not want to allow that, you can change the window style that we set up here. Instead of overlapped window, it's going to be overlapped. And then the vertical line here, the shift, and then the slash above enter. That's the vertical line here. So it's going to be overlapped ws_sysmenu. Another vertical line, ws_minimize box. Okay, so this will allow us to do all these 3 different styles, and it will allow us to minimize, close, not maximize. We did not set that up, and we can no longer change the size of our window. If you want to keep it the other way, just keep that in mind that the window can be resized. So if you do that, you'll want to recalculate your HUD and any of your graphical elements to the new dimensions that the window has taken up. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. So we just simply wrapped our Direct3D device and Direct3D into its own class. And we did some hard coding things here, especially the swap effect. And then we also ignore a lot of the presentation parameters. Now we will eventually set this up to be, we'll pass in everything that we need to here. But it works fine with those 3 passed in. The others just go to the default values. And then we hard code some things like mixed vertex processing, hardware accelerated rasterization, and then the default graphics adapter, and then the Direct3D target, and then the Z buffer and stencil. But for right now, that is just fine. Just introducing you to DirectX. We will extend the functionality of this class to do a lot more things, and then that will be a future tutorial. Next tutorial, we'll actually build another class called GameSprite that will wrap the functionality of a Direct3D texture and Direct3D sprite into one class. That way it's less confusing that you need to create a texture and then create a sprite and then all that kind of thing for every single sprite you want to have in your game. Alright, so I hope to see you next time.